There's a lot of very common Plants vs. Zombies plush sets that exist, but today we're going to be looking at one of the most rare and obscure Plants vs. Zombies plush set ever made. This plush set had a very short release and barely has any owners or documented images of any of the plushes in this set. So with that said, welcome to a look at the Heleworld Plants vs. Zombies plush set. Now let's start off with the first plush in the set, which is the Sunflower. Now one thing that you'll notice with all the plushes in the set is that they're all huge because, well, they're kind of meant to all be pillows. So that's the reason why all of these plushes are pretty big. Now the Sunflower plush in the set is actually pretty good looking. The petals and the face are made out of a nice plush material and the colors are accurate on them. The eyes are made out of this fake leather material which could get damaged, and there's a lot of plushes in this set that have damaged eyes in some photos. This is because the material used was not really that good, so most of them have become damaged over the years, so it's kind of hard to find one of these plushes, let alone a mint condition one. The worst part about this plush has to be the mouth. It's very skinny and you could barely even see it. I think if Heleworld made the mouth just a little bigger, the plush would look actually a lot better than it does. And that's probably the only flaw with this plush. Overall, the plush is actually pretty good, but it does have a bootleg of it. You could easily find this bootleg on eBay, Amazon, AliExpress, and other websites like that, and well, it's quite obvious when this plush is a bootleg. The petals in the face are a lot lighter color, it's very visible, especially on the face. The eyes are also just embroidered on it and aren't made out of the fake leather material, so yeah, this is a clear thing that you could tell that it's not a real plush. Also keep in mind, if you find one of these for cheap and it has a stock image, do not buy it because it's almost 100% of the time the bootleg. Now if you want this plush, for every single plush in this set, look on eBay, Macari, or Zanyu, except all these plushes are extremely rare and have a very low chance of showing up. For this plush, really the last time it was ever for sale was in a bundle that had a few other Heleworld plushes, but since then there's really been no documentation of this plush being up for sale. But this plush really isn't that rare compared to the next plush in the set, which is the Cherry Bomb. Now, probably the worst part about this whole plush is that it doesn't have a second cherry, but there's a clear reason for that. This is actually supposed to be a pillow, so obviously they aren't going to make two like the exact same looking pillow attached to one. It just wouldn't make that much sense. So that's the reason why that there just isn't a second cherry on this plush. The overall shape of the cherry is really nice, and Heleworld did a good job making the shape of it. The stem on it is brown and it is supposed to have leaves on it, and I don't know why they didn't add that. This plush's eyes and mouth are also just embroidered on. As I said before, some plushes have the leather eyes, and most of them do, but some earlier releases of Heleworld plushes have stitched on eyes. Most of the time though, you will see these plushes with leather eyes, but some really early releases that are extremely rare don't have them and just have embroidered on eyes. And overall, besides the fact that it's missing a cherry, it is pretty good overall. It does have some flaws about it, but still overall it's pretty good plush. Now this plush, you basically have no chance of finding it because there's only 2 images of it that even exist. And both of them are from the manufacturers of the plush themselves, so you basically have no chance of finding this plush because there's been no outside sales of it besides from the manufacturers themselves. But if you thought only 2 images was a really small amount, how about we move on to the next plush in the set, which only has 1 image of it, being the Snow Pea. So yeah, the Snow Pea plush has a whole 1 listing of it, and it was only listed by Heleworld, so there's no outside images of this plush existing. One thing that's weird about this plush is that it kind of uses the repeater head design instead of the normal pea shooter or snow pea design, which is inaccurate. I do think I know the reason why for this, but I'll tell you that later because it goes with another plush that's coming up soon in this set. On the back of this plush there appears to be 2 or 3 leaves. I can't really tell because there's really only 1 image of it and we don't have really much to go off of. And this is obviously just the Snow Pea head, and overall it looks like a really nice shape and looks quite accurate, except for the part that's just designed off the repeater for some reason. The snout also has no black part on it for the shooter, so yeah, that's another flaw about this plush. Overall, this plush does have a lot of flaws in it, and also the eyes and eyebrow are made out of leather, so they could get damaged. But yeah, you basically have no chance of finding this plush ever because, well, there's only 1 listing of it from Heleworld themselves and only 1 image since this plush came out, so it's basically impossible to find. And it's probably one of, if not the rarest plush in the whole set. Now let's move on to a next plush in the set, which actually has 3 variants of it, being the Walnut. Now from what I could tell, this is the first release of the Walnut plush and only has 1 image of the first release of this plush. And this plush is a pretty early on design because, well, it still has stitching eyes instead of just the normal leather eyes, which shows that this is probably one of the earlier Heleworld plushes that they made. I do gotta say that they did do a good job making the walnut shape, but it does kind of look like a tall nut, which does make sense because they could have just used the same shape as they did on the tall nut plush in this set, so that's probably what they based this plush off of. The eyes and all the embroidery on the mouth and everything is pretty good, except it has the same problem as the sunflower pillow, being that the mouth and eyebrows just aren't big enough. And they're quite hard to see because, well, they don't have that much detail to them and they're just small black lines. I feel like they should have made them a bit thicker or a bit bigger. For this design, the walnut plush is extremely rare and only has one image of it, so it's very difficult to find and you have a really low chance of ever finding it. Now, this is the second variant of the walnut plush, which is probably the most common as it has the most images of it. Once again, it has embroidered on eyes, eyebrows, and mouth, which seems to be the case for all the walnut plushes, so it seems like walnut was only made for early releases of it. It uses the exact same shape as the other walnut plush, except for the fact that the face is changed a little bit. Instead of the eyes just looking straight at you, they're actually looking to the right, which I actually think is an improvement to the other plush. And I feel like this is definitely the best design of the Walnut Heleworld plush. Once again, just like the other one though, it does lack with the eyebrows and the mouth, being that the lines just aren't big enough. And now for the final variant of this plush, and probably the rarest from what I could tell, is the brown version of just the other design of the walnut. I don't really know why this plush even exists because, well, we only have one image of it and it's very hard to see, and also this just isn't accurate to the game. And I don't think that this is a bootleg because there's also a picture of this next to the official Heleworld Walnut, so I don't know why there would be a bootleg next to the official variant. To the looks of it, it seems to be the exact same as the second design of Walnut, but just with a darker color. There really isn't much to say because there's only one image from the exact same image as the second design Walnut, so this is probably the rarest and the hardest to find. Now let's move on to the next plush set, which is the Chomper. Now something interesting about this plush is that it uses the exact same leaves as the Snow Pea plush, but just with a different color. And it seems like that Heleworld took a lot of factors from their other plushes and just put it onto their other plushes that they had. Which kind of makes sense because they already had the patterns for them, so they just put them on other plushes to save time, which does make sense. Overall, this plush is pretty good, but it's very hard to find the official variant of this plush. The reason why is that there's just tons of bootlegs of this plush. The bootleg is actually really easy to tell that it's fake or real because, well, it's a very lime green color and also the leaves don't have any lines in the middle of them. So if you find this plush and it doesn't have lines on the leaves and it's just a really light green color, then it's almost 100% a bootleg. The official Chomper plush should be a dark purple color. Also, the bootleg seems to just be way understuffed than the official, so if you do find this plush, make sure that everything's like stuffed well by the pictures of it, because that's how you can tell it's a bootleg or official. This plush is by far the most bootlegged in the whole set. You could basically find this bootleg anywhere. Just look up Chomper plush on eBay, AliExpress, Amazon, basically anywhere, and this plush will show up. If you do want to find the official variant though, I recommend looking on Zanu because that's probably the easiest place to find this plush, but it's still extremely rare and you basically have no chance of finding it. Now let's go on to the final daytime plush in the set, being the Repeater. Now, this plush has the Repeater head, which is the exact same as the Snow Pea head, which is why I think that the Snow Pea is based off of this plush. Basically, Heleworld already had the pattern for a Repeater plush, and they could just use this and just turn it into a blue color, and they have a whole new plush, which is actually a pretty good idea from them. Because this plush is basically all the exact same as the Snow Pea, except it's just green instead of blue. There's not really much to say about this plush because it has all the imperfections that the Snow Pea had, but just in a different color. And unlike the Snow Pea, there's actually two images of this plush instead of just one, but it's also just from Heleworld, so there's only two images from Heleworld themselves, so it's just as rare, if not rarer, than the Snow Pea. Basically, it seems that a lot of plushes in the set only have images from Heleworld themselves, so it's basically impossible to scale how rare a plush is. So yeah, overall this plush is okay I guess, but yeah, it's not the best in the whole set by far. Now let's go on to one of my favorite plushes in this whole set, which is the Gloom Shroom, and it's also the only night plush in this whole set. Now this plush actually has tons of variants of it. I'm just going to be going over the normal plush itself and then going over the variants because the variants barely change anything about this plush. Now this is actually the most accurate Gloom Shroom plush that was ever released because Lynxen did release one, but it's all gray. This one actually has the accurate colors to it. It uses eyes that look really nice, but they are made out of some delicate looking material, so they could get damaged and scratched easily. So yeah, if you do get this plush, be careful of that. And the mouth itself is just embroidered on, and it's just an embroidery piece, so it's not too special. But overall, Gloom Shroom is just a really simplistic looking character, and well, Heleworld did a great job making this plush, unlike Lynxon did. And this definitely has to be by far the best Gloom Shroom plush to ever be released by any company. Now, this variant with a small mouth is the first release of this plush. The second release had this thicker mouth, and as you can tell, it's a lot bigger than the smaller version's mouth. But by far the weirdest variant of the whole plush is that some of these plushes just don't have mouths on them. It seems like Heleworld just didn't make mouths on some of these plushes, but it does make this plush look a little weird and loses accuracy for the plush. But still, overall, it's still a lot better than Lynxon's plush. This is probably one of the more commoner plush in this whole set because it actually has one documented owner of it, which says a lot about this plush that when one of the more common plushes in this set has only one documented owner of it, which just shows how rare some of these plushes in this set are. But now let's move on to the most common plush in this whole set, being the lily pad. And just like the Gloom Shroom, this plush has tons of variants of it. I'm going to start off with the first release and go up from there, starting off with this variant. This is just a flat version of a lily pad with embroidered on eyes, and in my opinion it actually looks pretty good. It's by far not the best variant, but by far not the worst either. Overall, I think it looks really nice and was a good first attempt from Heleworld, especially because this is one of their early on plushes because it has embroidery on the eyes instead of leather. And with this plush, there actually came another variant of this plush, being the bloated lily pad. This is the exact same as the flat version of lily pad, but just more stuffed and a lot bigger. This lily pad plush also looks a bit smaller than the other one because it's just is taller and just bigger overall in height instead of width. And both of the variations of these plush were only for sale once on a very obscure website, so there's a very low chance of ending forever finding this plush. Now let's go with the most common variant of this plush, being the dark green leather eye lily pad. This is probably the most common variant of this plush, but still has very few documented owners of it. It's just the same thing as the flat lily pad, except that it has a little bit more stuffing in it and that it has leather eyes. The leather eyes though aren't really a good thing though, because they could get easily damaged. A slightly more rare variant of the leather eye lily pad is this lime green version of the leather eye lily pad, but there's also another variant of this plush, which is this version of the plush that has a lime green skin color and it has huge eyes. The only really difference about this plush from the lime green lily pad is just that the eyes are huge on it for some reason. There's no real reason for that, it's just that Heleworld just decided to make another variant of it, and it's also unknown if there's a dark green lily pad with huge eyes. Overall, for the lily pads, you have the highest chance of finding the dark green leather eye variant, as it's been seen the most times and has been for sale the most times. The second most common is probably the normal size eye lime green lily pad and the big size lime green lily pad coming after it. And the bloated lily pad and the flat lily pad, which is the first two variants, are both equal rarity because they were only for sale once. So I can't really say if one's rarer than the other because they've only been for sale once and from the same seller. So now let's go into another plush in the set, which is the squash. Now, from this image that Heleworld posted themselves, you can see that the squash actually looks kind of like 3D looking. But this isn't actually the case. It's actually a flat plush instead of a 3D plush, as it is supposed to be a pillow. And there's only two variants of this plush, both with very similar designs except for one small change. The only change from the first design to the second design is that the first design has a darker green stem when the second design has a light green stem, the same as its body color. But that's the only change about this plush. Other than that, this plush is exactly the same. There's also leather on this plush, so they could get damaged on the mouth and eyebrows and the eyes. But yeah, this plush is actually pretty rare and has very few images of the first variant, only being from Heleworld themselves, while the second variant is probably a little more common, but still extremely rare. Now let's move on to the next plush in the set, which probably has the most variants, being the jalapeno. Now, the first design of the jalapeno plush is just a small design of the jalapeno with embroidered on face. There is apparently a bigger size version of this jalapeno plush with an embroidered on face, but I couldn't find any image of it, so I can't really confirm or deny that statement. But overall, from the one photo we have of this plush, it looks pretty good looking, and it's also pretty cool to see listings of the old plushes in the back from this one listing. It also seems that the stem on this plush is also made out of felt, so you could get damaged there. Now, probably the most common variant of this plush is this variant with a small size and a big size jalapeno with leather eyes and teeth. Now, I actually really don't like this plush with the face design and just the shape and everything. It just looks a little off, and the jalapeno face just doesn't look right. Also, the leather eyes and mouth could get damaged, so that's another bad thing about this plush besides the inaccuracies on it. But if you thought this plush was weird, there's another even more obscure variant that only has 2 photos of it that just has a dark green stem and a slightly weirder looking face. I have really no clue where these images came from, because I think they might have came from Heleworld, but it has another logo in the bottom right which says otherwise, so I don't really know where these photos actually originated from. And the face on this plush is slightly different from the second release, but it looks quite similar, but also the stem's a really dark green color for some reason, so I'm not sure if it's the same variant or if it just has like bad lighting or something like that. But overall, the first design of this plush being the small variant is probably the most rare in the whole set, and the dark green stem variant is the second most rare, and the second release of this plush probably is the least rare. But there's still 0 documented owners of this plush, so it is all extremely rare. There's also a bootleg of this plush which has a really lime green stem and also just has a weird looking face which does not resemble the official Heleworld variant, so it's quite easy to tell when it's a bootleg. Also, you probably don't have to worry about getting the bootleg because the bootleg is just extremely obscure and probably as obscure as the Heleworld variant itself. Now let's move on to the next plush in this set, which also has tons of variants, being the tall nut. The most common variant of the tall nut plush is just this variant of the tall nut that just has a normal face and just looks normal overall. It uses the exact same shape as the walnut, which is why the walnut has a tall nut shape, is because they probably just copied the pattern off of this one, just like they did with some other plushes in this set. All of this plush's details are made out of a leather material, so they could all get easily damaged. The second most common variant of this plush is the sad crying walnut. For some reason they made this plush. I don't really know why Heleworld made this crying tall nut plush, because it really doesn't make much sense at all, but I guess they still did it at some point. From what I could tell, it's slightly more rare than the normal variation of the Heleworld tall nut plush, but still barely even more rare. And just like the normal tall nut, all its details are made out of leather except for the teardrop, which appears to be embroidered on, but I can't really tell that well due to the quality of the images. But by far the strangest variation of this whole plush is the tall nut that is looking up, has a teardrop next to his right eye, and also is just missing his mouth. Just like the Gloom Shroom, some variations of plushes didn't have a mouth, and this is by far the most rare variant as it only has 1 image of it, and I didn't even know this plush existed before researching for this video. This plush looks a lot different than any other variation of the walnut due to it actually just looking up instead of just looking straight. And also it looks a lot different than the crying walnut because, well, the teardrop is on the wrong side of the face and also it's not attached to the eye. And also it just doesn't have a mouth for some reason. This is by far the most weird variation of any plush in this whole set. But still it just looks oddly cool looking, and for some reason I do want it, even though it just kind of looks inaccurate. I still just really want it because it just is an obscure plush. But you basically have no chance of finding it due to only having 1 image of it. There's also a bootleg of the normal tall nut which has embroidered on details which obviously isn't accurate and has a much lighter color on the plush. So it's really easy to tell from the bootleg to the official. Now let's move on to the next plush in the state, which is the starfruit with 2 variations. Now this is the first variation of this plush, which looks just really weird looking, and for some reason it just doesn't have that many details at all on it. And this plush overall just looks really strange looking with the mouth and the embroidered on eyes, and this plush is actually extremely rare, only having 1 image of it. But the slightly more common version, the slightly better version of the starfruit, is the second design of the starfruit. This one looks a bit better than the first design because, well, the first design just looks really off, but they fixed a few details on the starfruit, but still, it doesn't look really that detailed compared to like the Lynxen one. And also the details on the second design are made out of leather, so once again they could get damaged, just like basically every single plush in this set. There's also this strange starfruit bootleg based off of this plush, which is in the same set as the bootleg Jalapeno. But once again, it's really obvious when this plush is a bootleg, and also you basically don't have to worry about ever seeing the bootleg because, well, I can only find 1 image of it, and it's basically impossible to find, just like the Heleworld variants. Now let's move on to by far the biggest plush in this whole set, being the Heleworld Cactus. Now this plush is absolutely huge, and for comparison, for scale, this is the Melon Cactus next to the Heleworld Cactus. It's huge compared to it. The most common variant of this plush and has one documented owner of it, and it has just like some really nicely detailed looking eyes, which differentiates it from the other variants. And also the eyes are made out of leather, so they could get damaged, but besides that, this plush is actually really good looking with the spikes that look accurate and the top of the plush that also looks accurate. Overall, this plush just looks really good looking, except for the only bad thing about this plush is that it's actually huge. So you need somewhere big to store this plush that is really tall compared to the Melon Cactus, so it'll take up a lot of space and it'll also be a lot of money. The slightly more rare version of this plush that has 0 documented owners and only has one image of it is this version, which is black eyes instead of the more detailed eyes. And the rarest variant of this plush looks the exact same as the other one, except that the eyes are just slightly smaller on this one than the other one. So yeah, this is probably the rarest variant of this plush. So even if you do find any of the variations plush, you'll need a lot of space and also probably a lot of money, probably because it's the most expensive plush in this whole set due to the size of it. Now let's go on to the next plush in the set, which is the Blower. And now the Blower's leaves are made out of the same design as the Repeaters, Chompers, and Snow Pea leaves. It uses the exact same pattern, except the leaves are just bigger on this plush than the others, which I showed earlier on the Chomper plush, being that just Heleworld reuses details from its old plushes. And this plush is actually really simplistic because the face are just 3 embroidered on dots, so it's really easy to produce and probably had the least effort made for this whole set. There's also 2 variations of this plush with equal rarity, this version just having a lighter face than the other one and slightly lighter leaves, and that's really the only difference. Both variations of this plush only have one image, and they're both basically impossible to find nowadays. Now let's move on to the next plush instead, which is the Magnet Shroom. Now the shape of this plush is actually really good, and Heleworld did a great job making a nicely detailed magnet shape. The eyes are made out of leather, and the eyebrows are just used out of this fuzzy material. I don't know if it's like glued on or stitched on because I don't have this plush and nobody actually does have this plush, so it's hard to tell. It also kind of takes off of the limited edition Magnet Shroom because it has a very tiny stem and leaves on it. So it might have been a little bit based off of the limited edition Magnet Shroom, or that could just be a coincidence. But yeah, overall this plush has a really nice shape to it, and overall is just pretty good looking. This plush actually has a good amount of images of it compared to other plushes in the set, but it has 0 documented owners, so it's still extremely rare. But an even rarer plush in this whole set that we didn't even know existed until a little while ago being the Kernel Pult. Now this plush barely resembles a Kernel Pult, and also the hat isn't actually part of the plush, it's just put on there for the image. So just pretend that the hat doesn't exist because it isn't supposed to be on the plush itself. Now the eyes and teeth are very inaccurate, and I don't know where they got the design from because it just isn't accurate to any plush or game design of the Kernel Pult at all. And the coloring on the Kernel Pult has like blue for some reason on it. Overall, this is probably the least accurate plush in this whole set, and it barely even resembles a Kernel Pult. And to be honest with you, if you didn't know this was a Kernel Pult plush, you really wouldn't be able to tell because of how under detailed it is. But this plush is very obscure, and we didn't even know this plush existed until a little while ago, so yeah, very rare. Now moving on to a slightly more common plush in this whole set that actually has a lot of documented owners compared to the others in the set, being the Coffee Bean. Now this plush actually has 3 documented owners, which is a lot more than a lot in the set besides the lily pad and one other plush that I'll be looking at in a bit. And the eyes are made out of this leather material, so they could get damaged, and there are versions of this plush that are just completely missing the pupils because they have fallen off because of the bad materials on them. And from images, you can only see that there's one eye on this plush, but on the other side of this plush, there's also another eye on it. But yeah, overall, this plush is still pretty good for a Coffee Bean. It's also the only Coffee Bean plush that we'll ever get, probably, because there's been no other plushes of Coffee Bean after all this time of having this plush, so it's a very likely chance that this will be the only Coffee Bean plush we'll ever get. Now let's move on to one of the most common plushes in this whole set, being the Umbrella Leaf. Either this plush or the lily pad plush is the more common. They both have a lot more documented owners than any other plush in this whole set, and I wonder why. There's really no definitive reason why, to be honest with you. It just seems like that they were more liked by people than the others in this set, which is just weird, I guess. So I guess people just like these plushes more than the others when they were available. The first design of this plush has one image that has embroidered on eyes, and it has these very nicely detailed leaf, which is on all the other designs of the plush, but these are actually really detailed on these plushes. On all variants of these plushes, you can see that the leaves are really nicely detailed, and I appreciate that Heleworld didn't just steal the design from like the repeaters leaves and actually made their own unique leaves for this plush. In second releases of the plush, the eyes were made out of leather, and there's also this obscure variant just like the lily pad being a lime or green leaves instead of dark green leaves. It seems like a lot of Heleworld variant plushes are just slightly different colors than the others. But yeah, you probably have the highest chance of finding this plush in the set due to it having the most documented owners out of like any plush in this whole set besides like the lily pad. Now let's move on to the next plush of the set, which is the Melon Hold. Now there's actually 3 designs of this plush, starting off with the most rare variant. It's just this like 3D variant compared to the others because the other variants are flat, but this version is actually 3D, but it's by far the most rare. And it seems like that all the details on its plush are just made out of leather, so they could be damaged even if you manage to get this plush, even though it only has 1 image of it. There's also this variant with 2 images of it, which is just the exact same as the Melon Hold plush in 3D, except that it's just flatter. And it kind of resembles the flat lily pad plush, but just with a different shape, obviously. But by far the strangest variant is this purple Melon Hold. And once again, I do think that this pillow is actually official because it was seen with the official Walnut and this dark brown Walnut plush, so I do think that it actually might be official. It's just super weird that they decided to make a purple variation of it though, because, well, it just kind of makes no sense at all. And also all the details like the eyes and stuff are also just blue instead of like the normal, which is just also inaccurate. Overall, it seems like the Heleworld just kind of made whatever they wanted out of these plushes because they don't look accurate at all. But yeah, the second flat design is probably the most common, while the purple and the 3D variant are probably both equal rarity as there's only 1 image of each of them. Now let's move on to another plush instead that has 3 variations, being the Gloom Shroom. Now this is actually one of 2 Gloom Shroom plushes that were ever made, the only other one being a bootleg. And yeah, overall this plush is actually really good. The normal variation of this plush is a dark purple color, and it has eyes that are made out of leather, and it has a mouth that's made out of leather, and the mouth actually looks the exact same as the tallness mouth, so I wonder if they based it off that or just made it their simplistic mouth design. This is the exact same as the others, except that's just a lighter purple color than the others. It's just another weird color variant that Heleworld made. But the most common variant of this plush is this version of the plush that has weird looking eyes. For some reason, the eyes are just looking straight up on this variant of the plush. There's actually multiple pictures of this plush that all look the same. At first, I just thought this was like a quality control error, but it turns out that's just how this plush was made. Which just, in my opinion, just looks really weird. Now on the wiki it says that 0 people own this plush, but there is actually 1 documented owner from an old YouTube plush collection, but the channel got deleted a while ago. So there is technically 1 documented owner, but it's unknown if the person still owns the plush because the video was really old and the channel got deleted a while ago. And the variation that the person owned was the first variation of this plush. But yeah, overall, all these variants are extremely rare and you have a very low chance of finding them, especially the light purple variant. Now let's move on to the next plush in the set, which is the Cattail. Now, just like other plushes in the set, there's 2 variations just with slightly different colors. I'm just going to go through the details for the plush because you could barely even tell the difference between the 2 variants. Now, the leaves used on this Cattail plush are the exact same as the ones used on the umbrella leaf. So they just took the leaves from the umbrella leaf and just put them on the bottom of the Cattail. It just makes the umbrella leaf leaves just more, like, not unique. The Cattail on the back of it, though, is also missing the red spike and instead is a brown spike, which is the same color as the Cattail itself, which is just inaccurate. And the eyes and eyebrows are made out of a leather material, and I'm not sure if the hat on this plush is a separate piece of like material or if it's attached to the plush itself. We can't really tell though because there's only very few images of this plush and no one owns it. Now, while you were looking at all those images, did you spot any differences between them? Well, probably not, because the only difference of them is that one has a darker hat and one has a lighter hat. Yeah, the details are basically impossible to see, but yep, there is a slight difference between the 2. Now let's move on to the next plush in the set, which is the Winter Melon. Now this is just the blue version of the 3D Melon Hold plush, and this is actually a lot more rare than the Melon Hold plush itself because, well, it only has 2 images from Heleworld itself, so it's extremely rare. And, well, just kind of like the Snow Pea and the Repeater, it's just a recolored version of another plush that was really easy to make for Heleworld. So yeah, overall, this plush is extremely rare though, and you basically have no chance of finding it due to only having 2 images from Heleworld themselves. Now, basically another variation of another plush being the Gold Magnet. They used the exact same magnet shape as the Magnet Shroom plush, and well, they didn't really change much about it except that the leaves on the bottom are the exact same leaves from the repeater and like the Chomper. This plush basically took aspects from different plushes and just turned it into one plush, using the leaves from other plushes and using the shape from another plush. The only really unique thing about this plush is that the eyes are a bit different. There's also a bootleg of this plush that's really common to see on websites like AliExpress, eBay, and Amazon, so be careful of that. But it is quite obvious when it's a bootleg due to the leaves being a weird color, and also they're a lot smaller than they're supposed to be, and also the embroidery is just off. Now let's move to by far the most mysterious and rare plush in this whole set being the Cobb Cannon. And there's a whole one image of this plush, which is this image. Yeah, you could barely even tell it's a Cobb Cannon because, well, Cobb Cannon has basically no documentation that this plush ever existed besides this one photo and one listing of it. Basically, the Heleworld Taobao store got archived, and well, the image of this plush used in its listing never loaded, so we only had words for a while and never actually had an image of this plush. Until, well, this image was discovered, which could be called the Cobb Cannon because, well, it doesn't really look like any other plush, so it could be the Cobb Cannon, but really, who knows? It barely even looks like it. And to be honest with you, it could be a different plush that this is like in a weird bag or something because this image came from a pile of Heleworld plushes, so yeah, it could just be a separate Heleworld plush, and this couldn't even be the Cobb Cannon. But yeah, this plush is impossible to find because it has one image of it that barely shows it, and also it doesn't have really any documentation at all. Now let's move on to the first and only zombie plush in the set, being the basic zombie. Now this is probably the ugliest plush in this whole set due to the zombie just not looking that well, and I'm glad that Heleworld stuck with mostly plants instead of zombies because, well, the zombies don't really look that good. The clothes and just body and everything look alright, but the face they just did terrible on due to the mouth being like really far stuck out and also the teeth being all bent on the top. He also is missing the hair on the top of his head, and also there's missing a lot of embroidery there, and the eyes just look really weird as well. And I'm glad that they stuck with plants instead of zombies because, well, the zombie just doesn't look that good overall. And, well, that would be the end of the set if there weren't two miscellaneous plushes. One of the miscellaneous plushes are the cone. Yeah, they just made a cone plush instead of making a cone head zombie. And, well, this plush could be bought and just put on the zombie, but they're both extremely rare, and you basically couldn't find the zombie or the cone itself. There's a small size and a big size of this cone. It's actually this image of the zombie next to the small size of the cone, so they probably did come together at one point possibly. And now the final plush in this whole set is the Stinky the Snail. Yeah, this is probably the weirdest plush in this whole set, made of a character that's really unknown. Basically, the snail would come on the screen in the garden and, well, just help you out with stuff in the garden. So yeah, it's really not that much of a major character, so I don't know why the Heleworld made a plush of it. Also, the plush of this character isn't even that accurate. Well, the shell is like a nice looking color, but like the skin is just off, and also it's missing the eyes and the mouth. And for some reason, there's also two sides of this plush, which are both inaccurate because, well, it's white instead of green, and also it just doesn't have that accurate like eyes and mouth. But yeah, overall, all these plushes in the set are extremely rare, and you basically have no chance of finding any of them. And this probably has to be one of the rarest Plants vs. Zombies plush set ever made. Well, which plush in the set was your favorite? Mine probably had to be the Gloom Shroom, but yeah, comment yours down below, and yeah, have a great day.